Welcome to A Basic Look, the show where we look at Dungeons & Dragons from a simple perspective. I'm your host, Wally. Today's D&D topic will be the fighter class. We will look at how they are described in the player's handbook, their basic abilities at second level, and the different types that exist, and finally, the role-playing aspect of the fighter. We look at second level because we're here for a basic look, and too many abilities get complicated. The fighter generally fills two areas of combat. One of two areas. One is a tank who does alright damage. The second is a pure damage build who can cut down the toughest of enemies. The Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook short breakdown of the fighter class says the fighter is a master of martial combat, skilled with a variety of weapons and armor. Fighters are known for their consistency because once you have your fighting style, it's usually pretty simple in deciding what you need or want to do in a combat situation just because they are simply made. Doesn't mean they're basic, they're simple. According to D&D Beyond, it is best to stick your highest stat as either strength or dexterity. We'll get into this later. The second stat is going to be your constitution. Strength or dexterity has to be chosen for your main stat because it depends on what kind of weapon your fighter is going to be using. Think about it this way. If you're using a ranged weapon or something like a dagger or rapier, you're probably going to be in the dexterity stat block. There are exceptions. There are always exceptions. Next is with strength, you're going to be using long swords, shields, great swords, big axes, spears, pole arms of any kind. The bigger weapons. Some make sense along those lines anyways. Now, the constitution stat is, like most, for sure at first level is going to increase how much health you have, and then later on a little bit at a time. Then after the stats is your abilities, and at second level the fighter gets about 3 abilities that are to be really noticed and noted. The first is going to be your fighting style. Now with your fighting style, you usually want to choose this before you decide where your numbers of your stats are going. This is because certain fighting styles are made for certain weapons. And as we talked about, certain weapons take either strength or dexterity. We're going to run through these fighting styles real fast. Archery, well, that's going to be dexterity. Defense, that can be either or. It just increases how much your armor protects you. Dueling, it can be either. Depends. Are you using super light weapons or heavy weapons? Great weapon fighting. That's strength. Should be obvious. Protection. You're going to be using a shield. I would suggest strength, but it's up to you if you want to use a shield and dagger together. 2-weapon fighting. This can be either strength or dexterity. Up to you again. Our next ability is, I feel like, not talked about much, and that's second wind. Guys, second wind is amazing. See, how often is it again? Once per short rest. Short, not long. Short rest. You can use second wind to roll the 10-sided dice, so 1 through 10. And you can roll that dice. Say I roll it and I get a 7. Well, With second wind, if I roll and get a 7, I add my level. So I'm at second level. That's 9. What does this number mean? That's how much you can heal in that moment. Second wind is a self-healing, once per short rest item for the fighter. That's pretty cool. And I feel like it's not talked about as much. And yes, it can come in clutch. Then we have the pretty well-known English action surge. What action surge does is give you simply per, let's see here. Oh, 1 per short rest again. Nice. You get an extra action. Simply put, you can swing all the attacks you have and then be like, action surge. Swing again. The same amount of attacks. It's not just an extra swing. It's an extra entire action. So if you're a fighter and you, let's see here, need to get to somebody who's further than your regular running distance away, and you need to get there fast, but you also need to attack them, action surge can give you the extra distance because you can take an action to run faster. So you use that, get there faster, still have your attack, and are able to attack. That's pretty cool. Or grapple, because they may be running, but you don't want to kill them, so you just tackle them. Which grapple is an action too, and why you would need action surge. And that's just kind of comes down to just the amazing parts of the fighter, for sure. And as we talked about the second wind thing of healing, if you're healer of the group, or if the healer of the group can't heal you for some reason at that point in time, and you don't have any potions, second wind can save your life, or your character's life. Anyways, and that means you could possibly win that whole confrontation, even though it didn't look like it in the beginning. Believe me, a max of being able to get 12 health can change an entire scenario. Especially if, like, little attackers like goblins, there's just a bunch of them. I think if they low roll, you can survive 2 or 3 hits if they hit you. So that adds a lot to it. And kind of now that we've covered all these abilities, we're going to move on to just kind of the roleplay aspect. And a lot of people claim the fighter doesn't have much there for roleplay. I beg to differ. The action surge and the second wind, great opportunities of somebody digging deeper in the middle of combat and fighting harder, but not having to get too angry to die like the barbarian would. And so that just offers a different angle on that. Also, you have to look at, why is your fighter fighting? Are they part of a military? Are they after somebody in particular? Then you have, how did they learn how to fight? Did they just learn on the street out of pure experience? Did they have formal training? Were they in the army? Are they a noble who has fighting as basically a requirement also? Or did they just kind of, be good at it because some people are that way in real life? So that's not me. And that's just a few of the questions you can ask, because we all know the, 5 W's? Who, what, when, why, where. Oh, and then the how. So that's not even all of the 6, primary questions to ask. So all in all, the fighter is just versatile in combat. He offers so much. Even though it doesn't seem like it, he can do so much more if you're creative. Even if you're not. Just try to think of, okay, But what if I didn't swing my sword and I grabbed this person and restrained him? We now have somebody to interrogate. Or what if instead of just hitting the wizard that we're fighting, I steal his staff and component pouch so he can't cast spells anymore? Oh, that's pretty cool. Now, again, the saying I like to have is just because it's simple doesn't mean it's basic, even though our show is called A Basic Look. And that comes in with the fighter. It all depends on how you play him. That's all I have on the fighter for now. Next week, we're going to look at the monk, who is slightly more complicated than the fighter, but still in the simple land of things, unlike the druid of the previous week. And until we get to the monk, let me know of how you play your fighter. Let me know how ideas of how you want to play a fighter, because that's always fun. Ideas, ideas, ideas. Give other people ideas in the comments. It's always fun. Share creative ideas. It's a cool thing to do. But until then, just like the video, subscribe, because beyond just this series, there are more series that you might decide you like and want to watch. I know there's some pretty cool ones about photography. I kind of watch those myself. It's good stuff to learn, especially if you want to learn stuff about cameras. So, until next week, who will you be?